We're now on to our second presentation of the day, and I'd like to welcome up on stage the next presenters, Ian Finlay and Greg Rorison from Johnstons of Elgin. Johnstons are one of our largest manufacturers and have recently been awarded the B Corp certification. And Greg and Ian are going to talk to us about how they achieved this and what they hope to achieve by being a B Corp certified company. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Greg Rorison and I am Private Label Director for Johnstons, and I'm joined today by my colleague Ian Finlay, who is our Sustainability Specialist. For those of you who are less familiar with Johnstons, we are a 226-year-old cashmere manufacturer based in Scotland. Today we have two factories in Scotland, one in the north in the town of Elgin, which is a fully vertical weaving mill. So there we take fibre and process it right through to woven finished product. And we also have a knitwear factory in the borders town of Hawick. And I'm delighted to say that earlier this year we became a B Corporation. So myself and Ian are here today to talk a little bit about what B Corp is, first and foremost, why it was important to Johnstons, and then Ian, as the person at Johnstons who really drove that accreditation process for Johnstons, will go through the practicalities of the assessment. So first of all, what is a B Corp? Well, my personal definition of a B Corp is a purposeful company who uses its business as a force for good. Now, how does that compare to a normal company? Well, most normal companies are legally obliged to maximise profit for their shareholders. So, of course, this means that profit becomes the main purpose of that business. Now, there are people who believe that that's okay, that indeed profit at all costs is a good thing, and that will benefit all of us over time. But obviously there's also critics of that system too, who believe that capitalism is intrinsically evil and will eventually lead to ecocide. Now, the B in B Corp stands for benefit, and what the B Corp movement is trying to do is to moderate those two extreme positions and to provide a framework from which companies can demonstrate that their purpose is not only to make profit, but also to benefit wider society and to benefit the environment. So this three-pronged purpose of profit, people and planet is often referred to as the triple bottom line. I'll now play a very short video with a little bit more information.
We have a dream that one day all companies will compete not only to be the best in the world, but the best for the world. Others share this dream and have begun to turn the dream into a community. This community signed a Declaration of Interdependence and invited others to join them. Now thousands of companies from 60 countries are turning our community into a global movement to redefine success in business. B corporations use the power of business to solve social and environmental problems. Our largest certified B Corp works to inspire a healthier world through food. A food service company that serves over 1 million meals to low-income public school students every week. A manufacturer that goes green and helps workers move from welfare to a career. An online bookseller that recycled used books and funds local libraries and global literacy. An outdoor apparel company that stewards the environment. An ice cream company that maintains its mission post-sale. B Corp is a certification that helps consumers identify these change makers, and investors make money and make a difference. As a community, we are passing laws around the world, creating a new kind of company that serves society and shareholders. We are leading a global movement of people using business as a force for good. Join us. Be the change.
Now, if a company wants to become a B Corporation, it's not good enough just to say that they're committed to the triple bottom line of people, planet and profit. One of the fundamental changes a business has to do when it wants to become a B Corporation is to formally demonstrate this commitment by amending their Articles of Association and writing it into those Articles of Association. So at Johnstons, we've taken this step and we've amended our founding documents, legally committing to promote the success of our company for the benefit of our members as a whole, so those are our shareholders, but also through our business and operations to have a material positive impact on A, society, and B, the environment. Now, what I would say here is that these ideals aren't necessarily new to Johnstons. They're very much values that we've had as a company for a very long time. Indeed, when our second ever chairman, James Johnston, retired in the late 19th century, it was written in a local newspaper that he ran the business not for the profit of himself, but for the benefit of the community. So these values remain today, but by formally recognising them in our constitutional documents, we're locking that same mission in for future generations. Now, as well as B Corp being a way to formally recognise that commitment to our people and to the planet, B Corp's also been a very important tool for Johnstons, as it's a certification that recognises a lot of the good work that we were already doing as a business. Companies are assessed across 6 key areas: governance, workers, community, environment, customers, and disclosure. Now, I'll leave Ian to dive into these in a little bit more detail shortly. But before so, I've picked out a few of the things that we were doing as a business that supported these aspects of the certification, because I know that there are businesses here today that are engaged in exactly the same things. So first of all, on workers, you'll see on the screen what this area of the certification covers. Within this area, we were able to recognise that, like everybody here, our people are our strongest asset, and we provide skilled careers within our communities. Young apprenticeships are very much the lifeblood of our business, and as an SQA, Scottish Qualifications Authority, as an SQA accredited organisation, we're committed to providing our people with the training and qualifications that support career development, not just at Johnstons, but within the wider textile industry. We also support Fair Pay as a real living wage provider. We support staff with health and wellness checks, mental health screening, cycle to work schemes, fair maternity and paternity leave, and many other employee benefits that feed into this area of the assessment. The second area is community, and this was just one of the areas where we were able to highlight our support of the Sustainable Fibre Alliance. Now, as part of our SFA membership, we're committed to improving herder and animal welfare and working to preserve grassland within the cashmere supply chain. Now, the work that the SFA does has huge environmental importance, but fundamental to its mission is its support of herder communities and the education of young herders. And as cashmere is such an important part of our business, we recognise that these herder communities in Mongolia are as important to Johnstons as our own communities at home in Scotland. The next area is environment. Now, like all the businesses here today, we are doing a lot of work on our own environmental footprint and energy, waste and water. Ian is far more qualified to talk about this area than I am, so I'll leave him to dive into this in more detail shortly. But what I would like to highlight here is the obligation as part of B Corp to publish our impact report. So the impact report itself is very important because it provides a roadmap towards continuous improvement, and that is one of the key principles of B Corp. But it also, by making that report public, and so that everyone can see it on our website, it feeds into the transparency elements of B Corp, which is also very important to the certification. And secondly, as part of the environmental assessment, we were also able to demonstrate our work on reducing harmful chemicals, both internally and across the supply chain as part of our membership of ZDHC in the same way as M&S. The next area of customer, this looks at customer stewardship and customer experience, and this is where we really highlighted the importance of quality. Again, like a lot of the British textile manufacturers here today, quality always has been central to the success of our business. We make products that last from natural fibres that can be reused, repaired, resold, and will eventually decompose back to earth. We're definitely not a fast fashion business. We make products that last, and that feeds into the sustainability credentials of B Corp. And finally, on the area of governance, like many textile businesses, we're a family-owned business, and our family are in the community. But in addition to that, we also have shareholders who sit on our board who are outside of the family, so that helps to keep our governance balanced. And finally, this is a really easy one, but we pay fair tax. And something as simple as paying fair tax feeds into the ethics and transparency elements of B Corp. I'll pass over to Ian now, who will dive into a bit more information on the actual process itself.
Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about B Corp, which is something I'm delighted to do, and I was delighted to be asked by Johnstons of Elgin to do this, because it's one of several frameworks that essentially I've been obsessing over for the last 30 years. I have a whopping 18 months of experience in the fashion trade. I have 30 years of, as I say, obsessing about sustainability. And one of the great things about B Corp is that it actually directly addresses three of the issues that are important today. Those being, how do you improve environmental and sustainable performance? How do you measure and monitor that progress? And how do you communicate that? As we saw in Monique's presentation, all of those different accreditations which you can confuse people with. We don't just use B Corp in its own right. I mean, we also have ISO 14001, our management systems. But what we're trying to do is to run essentially an education program through the company. And I'm introducing other frameworks, for example, the Planetary Boundaries framework, which some people might be aware of. Another one called the FSSD, the Framework for Strategic Sustainable Development, also known as the Natural Step, and its child, which is a Future Fit Business Benchmark. These are ways to help people sort of contextualise what it is we're trying to do and why. Essentially, sustainability is a systems level problem. So you have to take a systems approach to it, and that means you have to use different tools. When you're building a house, you don't just use a hammer and a screwdriver. You have to have all different kinds of tools, because different tools are designed for different things. So B Corp, as Greg said, it's an assessment tool. And there are 1,500 companies in Britain doing it. Most of them are quite small, to be honest. London actually is the B Corp capital of the world. The UK is the second largest place, with the second largest number after America. And 58 industries and 80,000 people. I mean, it's clearly still a niche. But these companies are totally committed to what they're trying to do, to try to bring and embed sustainability into what they do. Johnstons are the largest B Corp in Scotland in terms of number of people and our turnover. If somebody knows different, I welcome being corrected, but I believe that's correct. And there are other names which you're maybe familiar with: Berghaus, Patagonia, Jojo Mamon Bebe. And what is interesting for me is that I was looking for a piece of outdoor equipment recently, and as I was trawling through the internet trying to decide who to buy from, I noticed that Berghaus were a B Corp, and that made the decision for me. There and then I said, no, I'm going to buy from these guys, because I know what they've been through to get the B Corp certification. Believe me, I'm quite fierce in my beliefs and my opinions about sustainability. After 30 years, you might expect that. But going through the process, I was utterly convinced of its validity, because it is thorough beyond anything I've come across before. But essentially, it's just a tool that any company can use to assess themselves. You don't have to go through the B Corp accreditation. You can just use it as a tool in its own right. The board, which is largely, Johnstons is a family company. So it was the decision they made. I believe they took some time to decide, how are we going to show our environmental credentials? How are we going to manage our environmental performance? And they came to the B Corp as their preferred option. And the last CEO, before Chris Gaffney at the moment, he was the one that started the process. And in September 2021, I joined 4 months later. It took a year and a half, which I think is about normal. We thought at the time perhaps it was because we were quite a big company, and a lot of B Corps are 9, 10, 15, 20 people, not all of them, but we just thought this is taking a long time because we are so big. Perhaps it was to do with COVID, but it was actually just because they are so thorough. Every time we had to give them some information, like our ethical business policy, which is 15 pages long, the verifier went away and read it and came back with questions. It wasn't just, oh yes, you've got that tick, fine, off you go. They actually came back and challenged us a number of times, which was very, very useful for us because we get feedback. We were eventually certified in May of this year. We desperately tried to get the certification for our 225th birthday, but no way. So yeah, the certification comes up every 3 years, and the process, the questions that are in there, the framework is changing at the moment. But I believe just because we just sort of beat that deadline, so we'll go through the old one if we want to. So anyone who's starting now, the questions might be slightly different. I haven't seen it. But yes, in 3 years' time, every year we have to produce an impact report, which tells our customers, our audience, what we're doing. The time and financial commitment is non-trivial. I'm not quite sure how much it costs. I think it probably depends on the size of your company, but you're probably looking at £20,000–30,000 just to begin with. If you want to go through the certification process, you can use the tool, which I'll come to. But £30,000 or £40,000 when your company is turning over £80 or £90 million, as far as I'm concerned, is a drop in the ocean if what it helps you to do is to focus on this sustainability challenge, which is the most pressing issue of our time, if you believe me. Time commitment, let alone what our previous CEO put into answering all the questions. Then there was all the time that I put into answering all the questions and chasing up people and having meetings and finding the policies. Do we have the right policies in place? If we don't, we had to sit and write them. I had to bring in, we had several meetings with the verifier online, and we were constantly challenged, and I would have to bring in 5 or 6 different people. So the head of HR, somebody from health and safety, somebody from the materials team, because they questioned us on everything, which was, we were very happy about it, actually. So as Greg said, there's a legal commitment you have to make, and I think this point is worth making twice. And I believe this is actually where the reality of the decision that's been made to go down the B Corp line will come, because there is now a tension in the company when we're talking about investing in new equipment or new processes. Then now we've actually said that we will look at how this impacts on people, that we will look on how this impacts on the environment. It's no longer just a kind of, yes, we've thought about that, because when we come up for recertification, what they're going to say to us is, you said you were going to do this, show us the proof. And we have to do that. So when we invest in new equipment, we have to show that we've taken the energy efficiency into account. And that can be quite difficult in our industry, because how many companies make the enormous machines that we use? And clearly Johnston's focuses a lot on quality, because without that focus then we wouldn't be able to make the best cashmere products in the world, which is what we do. That's correct, isn't it, Greg? Yes, that's correct, yes. There's a transparency aspect to it as well. So this here is what you would see if you go looking for a B Corp. So if you go onto the B Corp website, then you can put in a question, and this is what comes up. It's broken down into the 6 different sort of sections that the company is assessed on. So you get an overall score and then an individual score for each one of the sections. Is it social, is it environment? But it doesn't go any further than that. So you're not giving away any financial information. You're not giving away any details that you want to keep quiet, but you're up there, front and centre. Again, you know, and as is every other company, so they can see how well or otherwise you're doing. I was quite surprised when I saw this, that the average score for a company would be 50.9, because initially we'd got a score of 84, and we were going through it, and we had all this stuff in place, like Greg said. You know, we pay the real living wage, we have health and safety policies, all of these things, which I just thought this is normal, surely. Companies should have these things in 21st century Britain. It's just the way it is, but apparently not. So although our sort of score hovered around 80, 82, 83, were we going to get over the score or not, was my job on the line. And at one point we even went up to 98, but then we came back down and we ended up with this score, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Anybody who can get their B Corp certification, I applaud you, because I see how much work you've done. But there's also, yes, you have to go through a risk review. So there are certain industries which probably just aren't going to go anywhere near B Corp. You might be excluded, I'm not sure. But basically, it's difficult to be a B Corp if you're manufacturing weapons. Tobacco, GMOs, there's various other things, but that's the reality of it. So it's quite challenging, but it can be done. So the Business Impact Assessment tool is available online. It's free. Any company can use it. And essentially what it is it's a big checklist. I think of these things as like ISO 9001. It's just a checklist that you can go through and you say, this matters to us, this is relevant to us, that one not so much. And these are the 6 impact areas which you get questioned on. Governance, workers, community, environment, customers, disclosure. Now, that's just the number of questions that we were asked based on how we were answering the questions as we go forwards, because some of the questions are what's called gateway questions. So it's like, do you have an environmental management system? No. Well, that's the end of those questions. Do you have an environmental management system? Yes. Do you have targets? It opens up all these other questions, and all of the questions are scored. So, you know, it can basically take you down a big long route of answering, yes, we have this in place, yes, we have ethical standards, yes, we have, you know, all kinds of things like that. But each one of the questions has a score. So when you look at the score of 88.5, it's not like you answer a question and you get 5 marks. If you answer a question positively about one of these things, you get 0.2 or 0.15. You know, so getting to 88 is quite a challenge. Yep, the environmental management side of things. This is essentially what one of these looks like in more detail. I just picked the environmental one. So yes, do you have an environmental management system? Are your products certified? Have you done any life cycle assessments? Do you use any circularity indicators? These are all the kind of questions that you start being asked. Scope 1, 2, and 3. I cannot imagine how difficult it must be. I cannot imagine how difficult it must be a company the size of Marks and Spencer's, because Johnstons is a very straightforward company. We buy cashmere, it comes into our factory, and then it disappears. Or it didn't disappear, it's magically transformed into beautiful products. But trying to trace our scope 3 is very, very challenging, because even getting to our tier 2 suppliers is difficult. There's barriers in terms of time differences, there's language differences. Lots of these companies, they don't measure anything. I often make the joke at Johnstons that our monitoring systems are absolutely state of the art when it comes to energy and water, if the goal is to pay a bill once a year. But if you want to do anything more detailed than that, then, you know, and that's actually what we're doing. We're investing quite a lot of money into improving our monitoring so that we can work these things out. They ask you about your water. Do you conserve water? Do you know how much water you use? Do you recycle water? All of that kind of thing. And land and life as well. All of the chemicals. So are you part of ZDHC? Do you take part in any other kind of certified frameworks or programs to help us manage and measure what we're doing? The supply chain comes into it all the way through. And this is one of the challenges, I imagine, for bigger companies or companies that are more complex, let's say, than Johnstons. So it's not a straightforward process, but if you give yourself the time and you set about it with, you know, a genuine intention to answer these questions as well as you can and positively and honestly, then it brings up an awful lot of opportunities. And the way I'm trying to use it in the company is like this. So we have our company policy, and we have our environmental objectives, which help us to achieve our company policy. And then what we've done is we've identified the different goals. So every single one of these that you see here is a question, basically, that you would be asked going through the certification process. And all I've done is picked which ones of the questions relate to which particular environmental objective. And this is how I'm trying to bring it to the department heads to make the environmental objectives targets for each department, and then to provide them with a list of possible actions. So that they don't have to think about it. The people who are in charge of the wet finishing or you know, the yarn manufacture, they've got their hands full. They're the experts in doing what they're doing. I'm meant to be the expert in this kind of stuff. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we identify the different B Corp goals which help us to achieve our objectives to comply with the policy. And what's useful about a lot of these is that they have sort of internal targets. And if you can improve your performance in any one of these examples, then what you've done is and it also makes the business case for it, then what you've done is you've made the link between long-term ecological and social sustainability and the need to make a profit in the short term. And nobody can be sustainable if they go out of business. So this is a very, very important thing to be able to do. Some of the questions, they don't have internal targets. Some of it's just an answer. What was your carbon footprint last year? How much water did you use last year? But some of them, you get the points you get are graded on you know, how you answer individual questions. And what I've done at Johnstons is to go through all of our objectives, pick out each one of the B Corp goals that are relevant to that, and then next month, they don't know it yet, but the department heads are going to have a big list of possible actions which they can do and which will help us to move forward. And by doing that, we improve our B Corp score, we improve our environmental performance, and we can sort of prove it as well. So the practical benefits, as Greg said, Johnstons has always had people at its core, but this is a clear statement of intent from the company that proves what we're trying to do. And a kite mark for our consumers and partners. I'm very, very enthused because I've been telling people I know who I've mixed with over the years, oh yes, Johnstons are now a B corporation. And they go, what's that? And rather than me going, oh, this is terrible, nobody knows what B Corp is, I think it's fantastic because it means there's all of these people out there who, like me, would make a positive decision to buy from a B Corp if they knew what it was. So it's growing. The number of people that will become aware of it is growing. And the sustainability page on Johnstons is one of the most visited pages on our website. It's where people linger. So there's clearly an appetite for it amongst people who buy our products. The health check, this is what the business impact assessment tool, which I encourage you again, it's free to use. You don't need to go through the certification process, you can just use it as a checklist for yourself. But because it's based in science, I know some of the people who are on the standards committee for the B Corp, and I have utmost respect for these people because they've been part of things like the natural step development, future fit, these sort of science-based tools, which personally I am convinced of. And as I say, I'm quite a critical person when it comes to this kind of thing. So it's very, very useful in that way. The targets help us to identify where to go, but we're kind of doing it in a systematic way, rather than, you know, the present CEO has got, you know, is obsessed about human rights. So all of the effort goes into, you know, dealing with that kind of thing, but, you know, carbon or water gets forgotten about. So what this does is it just generates a big list of possible actions, and then we can see them all at the one time, and then we're able to prioritise and justify which ones we're doing based on what kind of impact we want to have, what are the company priorities, and which ones are actually make business sense. You get access to a community. It's a global community. How relevant they are to Johnstons, I'm not quite sure yet, other than I was at a B Corp event in Glasgow last night, and I left invigorated. You know, there's been some news about environmental stuff in the last week or two that hasn't been super helpful for driving the net zero agenda, but being around people who are on the same path as you can be very helpful. And it's maybe not about us getting help from other people. Johnstons maybe has a responsibility, because we're a bigger B Corp, to try to help others, which, you know, I'm very keen to do. And prospective employees, particularly younger people, know what B Corp is, and they want to come and work for us. We work with the University of Edinburgh Business School, and each year they come up, and last year we had 40 or 50 of them in one day, and they're just super obsessed about sustainability, to the extent that they've actually changed the name of the business course from international business to sustainability and international business, something along those lines. So yeah, and also internally, we recently, one of those students did some work for us recently, and they did a survey. Now, people internally to Johnstons are very, very keen on this. They like what we're doing. The chief executive pushes the message. They hear it. But I personally believe it hasn't quite landed yet. But this is a journey, you know, as already been said, that we're on. Everybody's on. Everybody's in a different place. Everybody has their own pathway to do it. And that's where we've got to. So thank you very much.